Hey guys, Lee Hyatt here. For my presentation this morning, I will be presenting on gender identity issues. So as we get started, at first I want to look at some definitions and then we're going to have some videos to look at. But before we get there, I just want to let you know this is not a topic that I was very familiar with. So I went to Google to see what I could find as I began researching. And in less than a second, when I searched for gender identity issues, I had access to over 400 million websites, articles, YouTube posts, videos, blogs, you name it, and it was there. This is a discussion that is happening across our nation, across the world, and it impacts all aspects of really humanity. They are all asking this question and interested in gender and gender identity. So this is a topic that's very pertinent to our students and to our ministries. The first thing that I would like us to look at today is just some definitions. So you'll notice here, this is a kids helpline related specifically to teens age 13 to 17. It is a website based out of Australia. And in this helpline, a kid can go there and find some information. The thing that I would like to look at is just a non-churchy definition of gender and gender identity as we go into this conversation. Gender and gender identity is a term that describes our own understanding and experience of gender. Despite what society expects, our gender can be understood, experienced, and shown through our identity, such as the labels or pronouns we choose to go by, our body, which is our physical appearance, and our expression, how you act and how you dress. So the point to understand here is that gender and gender identity is different from your biological sex when we're discussing it outside of the realms of the scriptures and what we would consider evangelical Christianity. With that, I'd like to jump over to show you a video. The thing I'd like to point out here is that this video is from Teen Vogue. Teen Vogue is a publication related to Vogue fashion magazine that focuses and targets females aged 12 to 17. So this is what they would be seeing.
I feel like we're given this amazing space to be prideful, but we're never given this space to, just look shame right in the eye, to look at how hard it can be to be queer, to be gender nonconforming, to be trans. It's really hard. It's a very high achievement to continue amidst so much awful crap. So that's what makes me cry. Love you.
Along with that, we're also going to jump over to a TED Talk. The focus here is going to be a 12-year-old actress named Audrey Mason Hyde, and she's going to share some of her story.
I didn't think of myself as a boy, but anything that was identified as female felt uncomfortable to me. I adopted the label of tomboy, which meant a girl that wore boys' clothes and played with boys' toys. To me, this avoided conflict. Tomboys are common, right? They're even considered a stage, as though we'll grow out of it. My parents never fought my insistence on avoiding dresses. They allowed me to choose what I wore because they believed it had no bearing on who I was. I started wearing shirts and bow ties to any slightly formal event. Here's a photo of me at 6 wearing a bow tie made out of paper because Dad was wearing his fabric one. As for my experience in bathrooms, I tried to avoid the problem by waiting until people left before I went in, because otherwise I'd feel trapped. Until about the age of 9, when someone mistook me for a boy, I would reply confidently that I'm a girl. But eventually it stopped feeling right. Instead of gaining confidence the more it happened, I lost it. Girl didn't feel right, but boy didn't feel correct either. So what did I want? I'm not sure I really knew at the time. My friends started getting more and more into sports, but I was never sporty. I was a bookworm. If I were a boy, people would probably have said I was a sensitive one. They don't tend to use that term as much for girls, because it's what's expected. So I started hanging out with a group of girls. This didn't really alter my style, more my attitude to the word tomboy, which I grew to dislike. I started to realize I could still be a girl and wear typically male things. In my mind, I was still a girl because I didn't feel like a boy. At the age of 8, I travelled with my parents and the cast of our film 52 Tuesdays to the Berlin International Film Festival. 52 Tuesdays was partly about a mum transitioning from female to male. I imagine some of you are thinking, oh no, Audrey just got this gender confusion from her parents' filmmaking. But this gender questioning happened before they started considering it, and they say I've taught them as much about this as they've taught me. Anyway, in Berlin, I met Bart. Bart wore drapey black materials, high-heeled boots, nail polish, and eyeliner. But he wasn't dressed as a woman. This demonstrated to me that I could be flamboyant and androgynous with my style, that my love of bow ties didn't need to exclude anything traditionally female. That year, when the film won the Crystal Bear Youth Jury Award, I took to the red carpet in eyeliner and nail polish. Here's a photo of me that night. Note the bow tie. I started to think of gender as something more dynamic. Gender was not your genitals, or even what you wore or acted like. And maybe it wasn't fixed. I'm going to take a second to pose a question to you. Why does it matter to you whether I am a boy or a girl? And if you think it doesn't, I'm going to really ask you to stop and think. Have you ever come across someone whose gender you just can't place? Have you wanted to know, even if you don't care either way? Have you wanted to know what they are? For those of you who say, no, I'm totally comfortable not knowing. I don't use he or she when talking about them. I just treat them as a human without any gender identifiers. Well, that's impressive. It's hard to do. Just try and talk about someone for a minute without using gender terms. It's really difficult. This is Audrey. Audrey is a young person who doesn't identify as any gender. Audrey writes stories and they love writing. Audrey loves writing, not the stories love writing. Whoops. It's hard for all of us. We want to know because of our language, and also, in my experience, it's because we treat men and boys differently to women and girls, and we want to know how to treat them. Sometimes I'm glad that people mistake me for a boy, because I get to have real conversations with people. They ask me about my future, and we talk about what I want to do. Often, when they find out I'm not a boy, they don't know how to treat me. My friends who show more outward signs of being girls often get called things like sweetheart or darling or love. People comment on how pretty they are. Recently, when I travelled overseas, I noticed a trend of gender-neutral or all-gender public bathrooms, which makes me feel so relieved. Having that choice makes me love going to the bathroom in public, and I love that I don't have to tell anyone what genitalia I own. Here's a photo of me in my sparkle pants, as I call them. They really added flair to my style, and they also really confused some people about whether I am a boy, or even possibly make them uncomfortable, because I seem like a very flamboyant, or even girly boy. Though I don't think this is always easy, I'm so happy with the choices I made when I was younger to wear what made me feel good, and that I felt expressed me, because I think I would be a much unhappier kid otherwise. I still get called a boy in public situations, but in terms of bathrooms, I try to go to the all-gender or unisex ones, or if I can't, I go to the disabled toilets. Although I do still use the girls' loos in school and sometimes in public. Using the girls' toilets, I never feel good, and I still have a tendency to go with someone else. Although I'm not labelled as a particular gender when I go to the disabled toilets, I don't feel great still, because it just reminds me that there are mostly no toilets for people like me, who don't identify within the gender binary, and that toilets are just another way we categorize people. My style has evolved drastically since the Star Wars t-shirts and skirts of my early childhood, and I think it has a lot to say about how I now appreciate and consider gender. I've realized that for me, gender is a spectrum. What my gender expression and identity is entirely about me and not about how other people perceive me. I don't know how we deal with that in a world so desperate to define by gender. I'm going to leave you with that same question. Why does it matter to you whether I am a boy or a girl? or that I am in the wrong bathroom. Does it really matter to you which bathroom I use? Because it does matter to me. Would it hurt you not to know someone's gender? Because despite how uncomfortable it might make you feel, you assuming my gender makes me feel uncomfortable every day. All I'm asking is for you to just sit with that little bit of uncomfortable to make someone else feel better. Because it does matter to me. It matters to me when I walk down the hall with my friends and you say, "Hey girls," but it doesn't mean that I want you to make amends. I don't hold my grudges, but every time you say that, it smudges my happy thoughts into undefinable whirls. It matters to me when you say I'm a handsome lad, because while you may be complimenting, it makes me question my inner vision of myself. So, strangers, sit uncomfortably while I tell you how my gender ranges. From day to day, sometimes neutral, sometimes fluid, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce. It doesn't make me a boy, but it doesn't mean that I'm realigning, and I don't want to be redefining what it means to be a girl, because I'm not a girl. So it does matter to me.
All right, guys. So with that, I do want to leave you just with a couple questions and just being honest and transparent for a second. Just my own initial responses as I was reading through some of these videos, reading some articles. I originally responded with some confusion, with some anger, with some frustration, like what's going on here? But the more I read, the more I kind of understood where some people were coming from. There seemed to be some terms and stuff that were continuing to pop out, and I'd like to share some of those with you. Those words were shame, pain, suffering, fear, violence, confusion, being hated, broken, uncomfortable, the need to change myself and change who I am, to not be harmed or hurt. With that, guys, I just want to also leave you to consider the thing that gender identity issues and those questions are not something that's going away. So our question is not will we deal with them, but how will we deal with them? So will we learn? Will we seek to understand by a means of sharing the gospel so that we can enter into a space and have a conversation with those who are different than maybe some of us are? Will we have compassion for those people who are like sheep without a shepherd? And will we be willing to go out and to love those who, quite honestly, many in our church may not be willing to love because of the things that are going on in their lives? Jesus loved us when we were far off and his enemies. Will we do the same? And with that, let's see what Dr. Ross has to say. Thanks, guys.